It was the kind of bitter, gray November evening that seemed to seep into the bones. Rain lashed against the cracked sidewalks of downtown Chicago, and the wind carried with it a sharpness that stung even through the thickest coats. Yet in the midst of the bustling rush-hour crowd, Emma Caldwell stood still, soaked, shivering, and staring across the street at a man she'd never seen before. He was teetering on the edge of the overpass, his hands white-knuckled around the rusted railing, his shoulders hunched as though carrying a weight far heavier than the rain-drenched backpack on his back. People hurried by, pulling their collars high and averting their eyes, unwilling to notice what was plainly unfolding before them. But Emma couldn't look away. She'd been that person once, not standing on a ledge, but on the brink of losing herself entirely. Emma was 35 then, a single mother to a wide-eyed 6-year-old boy named Caleb. She worked 2 jobs. A nurse's aide by day and a diner waitress by night, barely keeping the lights on in their tiny apartment. Her own struggles were enough to crush anyone's spirit, but something in the stranger's hunched frame, in the desperation etched across his face, ignited a flame deep within her chest. Without hesitating, she dashed across the slick road, nearly slipping, and climbed the concrete steps toward him. She approached slowly, hands visible, voice soft but unwavering. "Hey," she called gently, "you don't have to do this. Whatever's got you standing here, it doesn't have to end this way." The man jerked his head, startled. His eyes, hollow and red-rimmed, locked onto hers with disbelief. No one else had stopped. No one else had spoken. His name, she would learn later, was Jack Donovan, a 29-year-old Navy veteran recently discharged after a devastating accident overseas. He had come home to an empty apartment, a dissolved marriage, and medical bills that swallowed everything he'd ever saved. His world had crumbled in silence. Emma spent 2 hours on that bridge. She talked, she listened, and at times, she simply sat quietly nearby, making it clear he wasn't alone. Eventually, her compassion broke through his despair. Jack stepped back from the edge. He crumpled to the ground, sobbing, and Emma wrapped him in her jacket as though he were her own brother. But kindness often comes with a cost. In the following weeks, Emma lost one of her jobs for repeatedly arriving late, largely because she had insisted on helping Jack, taking him to VA counseling appointments, securing shelter for him, and ensuring he had warm meals. Her landlord, unforgiving of late rent, evicted her and Caleb just before Christmas. With nowhere else to go, she swallowed her pride and moved into a cramped women's shelter with her son. The small sacrifices piled into mountains. She lost income, lost stability, and bore the quiet judgment of those who didn't understand why she'd spent so much energy on a stranger when she could barely care for herself. But Emma never regretted it. Years blurred past like pages torn from a calendar. Emma worked tirelessly to rebuild her life, and Jack disappeared into his own, sending occasional postcards with brief, grateful notes. They drifted apart, as people often do, their lives running on separate tracks. Emma found a steady job as a home health nurse, rented a modest but safe apartment, and raised Caleb with unwavering love. Her sacrifices hardened into quiet resilience. And as time marched forward, those harsh years faded into distant memories, only resurfacing on long, reflective evenings when rain pattered against her windows. 2 decades later, on a golden September afternoon, Emma, now nearing 60, sat in the small sunlit kitchen of her suburban home. Caleb, grown and thriving as a teacher, had just surprised her with news of his engagement. As she prepared coffee, the doorbell rang. She opened it to find an unfamiliar man in an immaculate suit standing on her porch. His hair had grayed at the temples, but his eyes, those haunted, searching eyes, were unmistakable. "Emma Caldwell," he asked softly, his voice thick with emotion. "It's Jack. Jack Donovan." Tears welled instantly in her eyes as she covered her mouth in shock. Jack stepped forward and embraced her, not as a stranger, but as family rediscovered. Over coffee, he told her everything. After she had saved him, Jack had slowly rebuilt his life. Counseling, therapy, education, brick by brick, he'd reconstructed his world. Eventually, he started a small cybersecurity firm that had exploded into one of the largest defense contractors in the country. He had married, had children of his own, and never once forgot the woman who sat with him in the rain all those years ago. "I looked for you for years, Emma," he said, his voice cracking. "I wanted to repay you, but nothing seemed big enough. Until now." From the leather briefcase by his side, he pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a deed, to a sprawling lakeside property, fully paid for, along with documentation of a trust fund established in her name and Caleb's. More than enough to ensure she would never have to work again, never have to worry about a bill, and could finally rest after a lifetime of giving. Emma's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers, silent tears spilling onto them. "I lost everything helping you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I'd do it again 1,000 times over. I never expected anything in return." "I know," Jack replied, his own eyes glassy. "That's why you deserve everything." In the weeks that followed, Emma moved into the peaceful lake house. Caleb and his fiancée spent weekends there, filling the air with laughter and life. Jack remained close, visiting often with his family. What had begun as a chance encounter on a rain-soaked bridge had bloomed into a lifelong bond, proving that no act of kindness, no matter how small or costly, ever truly disappears. It echoes through lives, rippling outward in ways we can never predict. On a crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted across the lake and her grandson tugged playfully at her sleeve, Emma gazed out over the water and smiled softly. The world was still hard, still sharp in places, but in moments like this, she knew with absolute certainty that love, kindness, and selflessness had a way of circling back. Often when we least expect it. Sometimes, with gifts far greater than we ever imagined. And that was enough.